Thank you for joining me today. Welcome to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be doing a little oil sketch on a canvas board, and for my reference I'm using a sketch that I did last week at a life drawing session. So the original sketch is on in a pink pig sketchbook, and it's actually only a small one. It's an A5 size and it's on a mid-tone paper. The actual name of the paper is Cappuccino, and I've used graphite to do the initial drawing, and I've added some highlights with a Conte crayon. Unfortunately, this has meant it's got quite a shiny finish, and it hasn't been great to photograph. So the sketch itself on the left in the little book that I did whilst I was at the live session is actually a little bit more subtle than it appears to the camera. To the naked eye, it's a nicer sketch, but like I say, it's sort of fighting with the camera a bit because it's quite shiny as the graphite. Similarly, it's very difficult to video on canvas. You'll see that the camera picks up all the texture of the canvas there. And again, the finished thing is a little bit more subtle than it appears on here. So I'll tell you about the canvas board that I'm using. So that one's a Clairefontaine board, and it's a natural colour. So basically that's the natural colour of the cotton that it's made from. And instead of putting a white primer on, they've put a transparent primer on. And I'm going to leave quite a lot of that showing so that we've got that nice natural colour of the cotton there. So like I said, Clairefontaine, and it's 20 centimetres by 20 centimetres. I think that's right. Let me just check. Yes, 20 centimetres squared. So I thought it would be nice to do it in a square, nice composition, and leave all that canvas showing. And I leave it showing in parts also on the figure herself. When you go to a life drawing class, it wasn't actually a class, it's untutored, you just sit and draw. It's quite interesting deciding what to do, and you see a lot of people do the whole figure, and it's nice to do the whole figure sometimes, and I often do that, but you've got to pick out what you like and what attracts you to the pose. And this lady was particularly good at doing quite complicated poses and holding herself very still. Some of the other sketches I did from that day, you know, they were quite difficult poses for her, but in this particular pose I just liked the way that her head, her neck was stretched and she was looking away, and you saw that the neck and the shoulder and all the muscle tone in that. So that's why I chose just to do this little top piece with mainly the focus on that neck and shoulder. And so to begin with, transferring it onto the canvas, I did it with a watercolour pencil and a very light colour, it's a light blue colour, so that will really sort of disperse and disappear into the picture as I go along with the oil paint. I'm using a Taklon brush, so it's a synthetic brush. It's quite a small one, and you'll see it's a flat one. So that enables me to get some lines using the end of the brush, but also to apply the paint quite thickly. And, you know, quite abstractly, I don't want to be fiddling with lots and lots of detail because it's still quite a small space that I'm drawing in, and I don't want it to be too fussy. And the paints I'm using are the water mixable oils. So I began with a cerulean blue and some titanium white on the background. For the skin tones, which aren't really real skin tones, I've just looked at the tones, got some depth in the shadows, and right some very bright highlights, sort of overemphasize the tones really. But the skin tones themselves were made from alizarin crimson, French ultramarine and cadmium yellow, with a little bit of burnt sienna and some titanium white added as well. And then towards the end I've added some extra colour. I've put some of the cadmium yellow in just on its own, and some of the cadmium yellow mixed with the alizarin to make a nice orange colour, just to lift the whole thing and give a bit of a contrast to the blue as well, so it makes it a little bit more interesting. The colour for her hair was the crimson, the French ultramarine and a little bit of the burnt sienna. Not a natural colour at all. I wasn't aiming for realism, I wasn't aiming for natural colours, I was just having a bit of fun with the shape and really emphasizing and looking at those muscles and things, and the way that she had her neck stretched out and was looking over her other shoulder. So that's where I was concentrating on, really not getting a realistic colours in the skin tones, because of course I've now not got the model in front of me to do that. So this is all done from memory and from that sketch, and it's important sometimes not to work from photographs. I think as a beginner you can get quite stuck in working from reference photographs. You must work from what attracts you, and that's the beauty of having a sketchbook, because what you put in your sketchbook is what appeals to you, and then that makes your work more personal, more individual, and you start to develop your own style more than you would if you're working from somebody else's reference photos, which I know I do a lot on this channel because it's a good way to teach, and we've got lots of lovely reference photos we can get from sites like Pixabay. But in my own work, I really tend to work from my own sketches. Makes it more authentic, but it also, you know, you've got these copyright issues going on as well. You don't want to be always working from reference photographs. You want to make sure the work is individual and you start developing your own style. And I was quite pleased with the finished result of this little sketch. I'm leaving it to dry now, and then I'm not sure whether to give it a varnish or not, because this is the first time I've used these little natural coloured canvases, and I'm not sure how the varnish will go over the rest of the canvas. But I think it would perhaps be nice to put a matte varnish over the top of it once it's dry, so that will be my next thing to do. But of course, even though the water mixable oils, which means that they're good for cleaning and everything else, and you don't have those nasty solvents, they still are an oil paint and they still take a long time to dry, so make sure that they are completely dry before you apply any varnish to them. I actually take mine up to the house, because here in the studio, if I'm not in here, the heating isn't on. It's not really heat that dries oil paintings. Having said that, it's more about airflow, because it's more of a curing process. But I think if I take them up to the house, they've got that extra heat and that extra airflow. They dry quicker in the house than they do down here. So I take them up there, and then I will bring them back later and give them a varnish. So I think I'm going to continue. I bought quite a lot of these boards. They're not expensive. I got them from Great Art in this natural colour, because of course you could cover the whole thing up anyway, but I think it's quite nice to let that natural colour of the board show through. And use it as a mid-tone. You know, you've got that mid-tone already there, so you can just have a bit of fun by looking at where your really darkest darks are and your lightest highlights, and make a lot of contrast and quite an interesting picture. So for those of you that work in oil, I hope you found that interesting. If you liked it, if you want to put some comments in down below, and I shall be back again with you soon with more videos on various medias. So for those of you that are new to the channel, we have new tutorials and demonstrations every Monday and Thursday afternoon, 2 o'clock, and I'll look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you very much for watching, and bye for now.